Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another live edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, I am your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and we are so glad to have our audience with us tonight. And I think we've got a topic tonight we'll get into in a few minutes that will be definitely of special interest to a number of you out there. So we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. Of course, before we do, I want to thank our sponsors. And, we go do this every week, but these folks are great. Quest Fine Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. I tell you guys all the time what type of quality jewelry we have and what Pete and his brother Juan have there in the store. Take a look at their website. You got Mother's Day coming up. Even Father's Day coming up shortly after that for you ladies who might want to do something special. So go out there and take a look, give them a call, and they'll be glad to help you. I also want to thank Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service disabled veteran-owned small business owned by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park. C.K. and his crew has an excellent staff stationed all over the United States in about 30 different locations. They support a number of not only government contracts, but industry companies as well. Whether you're in need of IT support, security, performance management, measurement, training, whatever you may need, CK and his crew at NIS will be there to help you. So if you're looking for some assistance in that area, give CK a call. The other thing I really like about CK is being a retired Army veteran himself. He employs approximately 40% of his staff are veterans, and he supports the veteran community. So we are really happy to have him as our sponsor. So let's talk about tonight's show, and I want to get into our guest tonight. And with us tonight, we have U.S. Army Major General Edward Chrystal Jr., and I know sometimes you go by Ed, but I'm either going to call you General or Sir. And he is the director of the U.S. Vietnam War Commemoration. And we're happy to have him on tonight because he's got some wonderful information for us. The interesting thing is that General Chrystal started his career like some of my other guests, enlisted in 1985 and then later went to ROTC and earned his commission. And I know that you served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, among other places, and his awards include the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, and of course a number of other awards. But I'm going to have him share a little bit more about his time in the military with us as we get started. But first, I just want to say thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to come on and visit with us this evening.
Hey, Paul, thank you for having me on your show, and I want to thank you and all your audience for taking the time to visit with me tonight and having me on here. It's a big deal for us. Thanks.
Yeah, and I know back in December, I think it was, we had Navy Commander Brian Wierzbicki was on, who also works with your organization, and he came on and shared some of his experiences and shared a little bit with us about the organization and what you guys are doing. But we hope to get a little more of that from you tonight. And it's always great to have representatives from the organizations out there that are still trying to do so much for our veterans. But before we really get into the discussion about the commemoration, let's talk just a little bit. Share with us just a little bit more about your military experience and how I know you also retired as a lieutenant from the state police as your other career, which is, amazing. But share with us, if you would, how a little bit more about your Army career and how you came to be involved with the American Vietnam War Commemoration.
Sure, Paul. I think you summed it up pretty well. I'm born and raised here in New Jersey. I enlisted in the New Jersey National Guard, Army National Guard, back in 1985, which is a lifetime ago, maybe long before some of your viewers were even born, right? So been in since then. Went to college at Seton Hall, who knocked St. Joe's out of the playoffs yesterday, so that was a good thing. The basketball team went to Seton Hall University, ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps program, and did get my commission there as a second lieutenant. Was commissioned as a tanker and armor officer back then. That was
Okay.
1988 or so. Came up through the ranks. While I was a Army Guardsman, I also had a simultaneous career as a state trooper, as you said, in New Jersey. So about a year, actually a couple months after getting commissioned, I went to the State Police Academy and served in the state police from 1988 till 2014. So I've been retired from there for about 10 years. I grew up in the tank community as a platoon leader, later as a company commander. Then moved on to do some training stuff. I taught OCS for a while, taught a couple classes, did a couple hurricane response efforts to include Katrina and a couple others. Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. We went to New Orleans with the New Jersey National Guard to assist in that. And as you said, 2008, 2009 was in Iraq with the New Jersey National Guard's largest deployment since World War II. So that was a big honor to be a part of that mission. It was a great bunch of men and women from the Army National Guard and other places that we worked with there. So as I progressed, I was fortunate enough to be selected for general officer in the National Guard. I served as a deputy adjutant general for a while, and then I had gotten a phone. I did a little bit of time as a deputy. They call it a joint operations officer, deputy joint operations officer at Northcom in Colorado. And while I was there, I had gotten a phone call from the director of the Army National Guard asking me if I was selected for this position and would I be interested in coming into the Vietnam War Commemoration as a task force commander to plan this big project that they had for May of 2023. So this was back in August of 2021 when I came on board here at the Commemoration. Worked for retired General, two-star General Pete Albert, was running the Commemoration, a great guy from Massachusetts. And he kind of groomed me about what we were doing in the Commemoration. We put a task force together. We had a huge event, which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, back in May of 2023 for 3 days. We had a concert. We had 100 partners out on the lawn with us at West Potomac Park down there in D.C. And it was an official home 50 years later for Vietnam veterans and their families. So it was a big deal for us. Since that time, Pete Elwood retired, and I had the fortunate opportunity of being asked to stay on by the Secretary of Defense's office as the director, which I jumped on because it's an awesome opportunity. It's a great job. I get to go around and thank veterans and honor heroes. So can't ask for anything better. It's a great opportunity.
Well, you've had a pretty interesting career, and something that kind of struck me as you were going through it was, you were talking about being commissioned and going into the cab for tank, for armor for tanks. About the time you got your commission, I was sitting at 2/7th Cav at Fort Carson.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and although I spent most of my career in the chemical corps, it seemed that they seemed to think that I loved recon platoons. So, I had the privilege of serving with 2/7 Cav at Fort Carson, and also later 2nd Armored Cav in Desert Storm. And I think is that your spurs behind you hanging on the wall? I can't quite tell. Do you have spurs behind?
I do have my Stetson and my spurs hanging on the wall behind me. I'm very proud of them, and I was also had the honor of being the squadron commander for the 102nd Cavalry here in New Jersey, and they just happen to be deployed overseas right now, supporting our war on terror. So God bless all of them. That was a great opportunity as well. So the Cav was a good assignment, like you said. That's a great job. Yeah,
I will tell you that's some of the best time in my career, even though, I was a chemical soldier, was the time I spent in the Cav. And, I've got my spurs from 2nd ACR and actually was very fortunate to get the Order of St. George before I left.
That's
felt very, very blessed, very honored to get this Order of St. George before I left 2nd ACR. So, I kind of have a little bit of a camaraderie with you tankers, because I spent a lot of time with you. So, that's great.
Nice.
Listen,
The St. George Medal is hanging up somewhere back there as well. So
yeah,
that's a great honor to be bestowed upon you.
yeah, it really was. I really felt really honored when they gave that to me. It was something special during my career. So, a lot of people are not really sure what you guys are doing as the Vietnam War Commemoration organization. And so I was hoping you could I know that your job is to go around and try to ensure that all the Vietnam veterans are thanked for what they did and their service. And so share a little bit of that, if you would, how you're going about that and what you've been doing.
I sure will. So I will tell you that back in 2012, we were stood up as a commemoration appointed by the Congress to recognize Vietnam War veterans, Vietnam War era veterans and their families. And the time frame we were given was 1955 through 1975.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, and what I say when I go around and doing my talks is that, today as a society, we are great with our veterans and with our warriors. We welcome them home. We thank them for their service. We offer to buy them a pizza or a beer if we see them out with their hats on, and that's what we should do. But 50 years ago, as a nation, we weren't very good at that. It was a very tumultuous time. Our veterans came back from Vietnam, and most of society could not separate the war from the warrior. So they were spit upon, they were assaulted, they were called names, they were told to change their uniforms prior to leaving the airport, and it was a shame the way it was done. And when we were first stood up back in 2012 during the Memorial Day ceremony down at the White House, President Obama had said that it was a time that we should be ashamed of as Americans, and we should never let that happen again to our veterans. I'm paraphrasing, but so basically what we do now is through our commemorative partners, which we have roughly 16,000 commemorative partners, we go out and thank our Vietnam veterans, our Vietnam era veterans and their family members now. We have a lapel pin, which I'm pretty sure you're aware of, that is on our website. And that's the main point of these the ceremonies. We call them pinning ceremonies. And we call the Vietnam veterans up, and we present the pin to them, we shake their hand, and we welcome them home. Between 1955 and 1975, which is the 20-year time frame that this 50-year commemoration is based on, there was roughly 9 million people on I'm sorry, I'm getting my numbers mixed up. But we had a lot of people serving on active duty at that time, and we have roughly between 6 and 7 million now that are living abroad and within the United States, Vietnam era veterans. Through our calculations, through the help of our partners, through who hold events throughout this country, we've thanked and honored close to 4 million now, and the commemoration is around. Yeah, that's amazing. Our partners are great. So now we have our commemoration wraps up on Veterans Day of 2025, because that's the end of the 50-year commemoration. So I tell my folks, it's pedal to the metal. We have about 2 million more to go, and we're going to do the best we can between now and then with the help of our commemorative partners and your listeners.
Well, let me just stop you for a second, because I know you're talking about your commemorative partners, and I saw a little bit on the website, and I know those are partner organizations in all the communities around. Some of them are national organizations, other ones are local. So I just wanted to ask you, can you tell our audience, are you guys still looking for more partners to help you with this? Can they go to the website, or how can they do that if it's open?
So we are accepting commemorative partners only for a few more months, because our time is drawing near. But and actually, if the people look within their communities that know Vietnam veterans, there's actually a lot of community organizations. Most VFWs, most American Legions, most Vietnam veteran associations are commemorative partners of ours. But if you go onto our website, VietnamWar50th.com, you'll see that we have a link there to become a commemorative partner. And if an
Okay.
organization wants to become a commemorative partner, we'll give them everything they need to host an event and thank and honor the veterans for us and be that arm for us.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure if it was still open, that we shared that with our audience, that there's still availability for them to volunteer to help. Now, do you guys take monetary donations as well? I didn't see anything for that unless I missed it. Or are you funded through DOD or?
Yeah, we are a DOD agency, so we are not a nonprofit or anything like that. We do not accept donations. There was a time where we were allowing sponsors to do things for our May 11, 12, and 13 of last year, but that was just for that specific event. And there's a lot of legal ramifications there. But we fall under DOD. We're fully funded by the United States government.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and I just want to circle back for a second. I was just finishing high school right after the Vietnam War ended, but I still remember so much of that and seeing so much of it on TV. And, when I first joined the Army in 1981, there were still quite a few Vietnam veterans that I served with because I started my career in field artillery in a fire direction center. And there, our chief of smoke was a Vietnam veteran of our firing battery. So, you're right. I saw some of that firsthand of how these men and women were treated, and I just thought, my gosh, how can we do that to our own military people? And you're right. I think we're doing such a much better job today treating our veterans, I think, with the respect that they deserve. But I think it's really a credit not only to the presidents who were involved, but the DOD and then your organization for you guys to try and now circle back and make sure that these Vietnam veterans were thanked properly for what they endured.
Yeah, and Paul, you bring up a very good point. The Vietnam veteran, the way they were treated, they could have turned their back on society. They could have quit the military. They could have just gone in and done their own thing. But I'll tell you, same as you, I joined a couple of years after you. And when I joined the military, all my senior NCOs and higher ranking officers, they were all Vietnam veterans. We had our senior drill was a Vietnam veteran who looked a lot like Billy Jack, if you remember that movie.
Oh, yeah.
I will never forget.
Laughlin.
Yes, and the man would tell us stories about Vietnam and about how they treated the prisoners and about how the war was, and they went through a lot. And like I said, they could have turned their back on society, but they didn't. And now fast forward to more modern times. When I came back from Iraq, and when the folks that worked for me and the soldiers and the men and women that worked for me and other organizations came back from Iraq and Afghanistan or Africa or wherever they might have been stationed, the first person in line welcoming us home, cheering us and shaking our hand was the Vietnam veteran, was somebody with a Vietnam veteran hat on or a jacket on. Yeah. And they lead the way. They lead the way to ensure that our society will never treat veterans again the way they were treated, because they learned. And instead of turning their back on society, they wanted to retrain society and make sure that society understands how important these warriors are.
Yeah, I do the same thing as well. Having worked in DC for all those years after I retired from the military, and I just retired from my second career, so I'm no longer commuting into DC. But there were days I was outside my building and I'd see a World War II veteran on occasion or a Vietnam veteran, and I'll tell you what, I always made a beeline and an effort to go up and talk to them, because the World War II veterans were disappearing so quickly, and then the Vietnam veterans haven't been treated the way they were. To me, I kind of made it my own personal mission to thank those other veterans when I saw them, and I tried to do so at every occasion.
No, good for you. That's appreciated. And so I'll tell you, we talked about I mentioned earlier I was a squadron for the 102nd Cavalry here in Westfield, New Jersey, is the Armory. So I told this story pretty recently when I was down in Atlanta. But what really drove this home to me, the way these vets were treated when they returned. We were doing a Veterans Day ceremony. We meaning our staff from squadron, the Cav Squadron in Westfield, and we're at the local veteran statue memorial in town, and we're talking to each other, and we're talking to a couple people, and some folks from town came up, and we're standing in a small circle telling war stories. And you and I well know that war stories always start with "this is the truth," right?
Yeah,
and it always ends with a laugh or some kind of wisecrack. So we're going around in this small circle and telling the story and telling the jokes. And one man who I didn't know, a little bit older than me, has an overcoat on, and he starts talking about when he came home from Vietnam and how he landed in San Francisco, and about how when he walked out of the airport, he starts talking about how people were spitting on him and people were cursing at him and calling him names. And we're looking at him and we're like, yeah, there's no joke coming at the end of the story. This is his story. And the gentleman actually was in tears, and it really drove home the emotional impact. We're talking, how many years later. So it's a big deal, and it's still a thing, which is why the government is trying to do the right thing. Our commemorative partners are trying to do the right thing and welcome these heroes home.
Well, sir, we're gonna take a quick break right now, and then when we come back on the other side of our break, we're going to continue our discussion, because I'd like for you to share with us a little bit how these events, what happens, and then after that, talk a little bit about the 29th of March, because I know that's a big thing. So for those of you out there in the audience, we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors. All right. Welcome back, everyone. And for those of you that have been watching, you'll know that we have been talking tonight with Army Major General Edward Chrystal, who's the director for the American Vietnam War Commemoration. And he's been sharing with us not only some of his past experience with the military, but giving us an insight on how the commemoration organization was put together and what their mission is. And of course, which is to go out and ensure that all of our Vietnam veterans are thanked properly for their service, which is one heck of a task to take over. And I know, sir, as you mentioned before the break, you're using Commemoration partners in all the communities and organizations around the country to help you do this. So when you have one of these events, can you describe for us a little bit more of what you guys do?
Absolutely. Again, like you said, we have thousands of commemorative partners throughout the country. Basically, what we do is they either reach out to us or they have their own event, which is usually the case. They have a special event, whether it's surrounding the Vietnam Wall, the moving wall that goes out, the wall that heals that goes out to other states, or whether they're having a Veterans Day ceremony, or they're having a specific Vietnam War Veterans Day ceremony, which is March 29th is coming up, right?
Right.
So basically, they'll ask us, and if it's a large event and they request one of us to come out, one of us will come out and we'll present as a guest speaker. And usually we have a booth set up, and our booth will have additional pins, and we'll have just flyers and information about becoming a commemorative partner, but also what our organization does, and a little bit of history about the Vietnam War and the people that fought it. So we'll come out again. They'll have their talks and they'll have their event. They'll invite one of us to get up, and we'll give a little spiel, as I'm doing now, about what we do and why we're doing it. And it's not about us; it's about the audience. It's about the Vietnam veteran families. So we make sure we express that to them, and we thank them. We explain to them a little bit about the lapel pin that we're going to give them, and then we have all the Vietnam veterans or the surviving spouses come up, and we present them with a pin. We shake their hand, we welcome them home, and we thank them for their service. And it's always very well received. You know as well as I do that the veteran community are very humble and don't want recognition. So it's usually their family member that's going to, drag them out there and sign them up.
Yeah.
And we appreciate those family members. That's what keeps them coming.
That's a good point. I'm glad you raised that because, having me spend a 21-year career in the Army, and, sometimes we do forget that those family members are just as important. Yeah. And especially in this situation, I'm glad you mentioned that because so many of those veterans have probably already passed. And the only way to make sure that you are able to share that is through their family members. And I am sure that is so appreciative because I can tell you one day I stopped a gentleman in a wheelchair with his family on one of the streets outside our building in DC. He was a World War II veteran in his wheelchair. And I went up and it looked at what I assumed was his son. And I went up to him and I said, "Excuse me." I said, I'm a veteran as well. "Is that your father?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "You mind if I talk with him for a minute?" And he goes, "Oh, no." So I did. I stopped, talked to him for a couple of minutes. He was a World War II veteran.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, "Man," I said, "it is so great to see you out here today on the street." I said, "For all the things you guys did in World War II, I said, there's so few of you left, and it's really great to see you." So when I got finished talking with him, his daughter came over to me as I was getting ready to walk away. And, she said, "Thank you so much." She said, "Because that means so much, not only to him." She said, "You just made his day." But she said, my mom is over there just smiling like you wouldn't believe. And, we kind of forget the impact that it had on the families too.
No, you're absolutely right. And you bring up a very good point that World War II and Korea, they're far and few between now. They're definitely aging up there. But even the Vietnam era folks are becoming an aging population. They're all 70 and above now. So, we're very appreciative to be able to thank them. It's long overdue, but it's still a good thing.
So you mentioned earlier this date of March 29th coming up here in about another week. And yep. I understand that is the National Vietnam Veterans Recognition Day. And there's a significance to that date. First of all, would you share that with us?
Yes. So the specific date is the date that the Vietnam POWs were released in 1973. So that's the date that they're going with. So Vietnam recognition, the Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 when that was signed into law by then President Trump, and then President Biden also signed a proclamation continuing it. It's in perpetuity now. It's forever a veterans holiday, recognizing the Vietnam War veteran, which is again March 29th. And even now, there's events going on. We're going to be going to an event Saturday in New York City. We're going to an event next Wednesday in Barnegat, New Jersey, and we're having our own event on Friday, March 29th, down in D.C. at the Wall. So there's events all over the country, hundreds of events all over the country, thanking and honoring Vietnam veterans, specifically for Vietnam War Veterans Day. So if your viewers are paying attention, have them look around and find out where the one is near them and bring their Vietnam veteran there.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the one that's going to be here in DC at the Wall?
Absolutely. This is going to be my third year doing this event with us, and it'll be our ramping up to our final one next year. Every year at the Wall, we do a wreath laying ceremony, and it's a very humble, not a lot of speeches. We have a few remarks. And the first year that I did it, I was here for it. We had the service chiefs and the vice chairman come out, and they each escorted a Gold Star family member from all the different services from Vietnam and laid a wreath. The following year, last year, we had all the senior enlisted leaders from each of the branches, and the senior enlisted leader to the chairman come out. Their senior enlisted advisor to the chairman come out and escorted Gold Star children or Gold Star family members and laid a wreath. So this year we're changing things up a little bit. We're going to have the actual Vietnam veterans on the ground, with being escorted by a junior enlisted member from each of the services, and then we're going to have them together escorting a Gold Star family member. And we're also going to have a son of a Vietnam veteran who has yet to be recovered, who is still missing in action.
Wow.
We work very closely with that organization too, the Sons and Daughters in Touch, which is made up of folks who are still missing in action, have not been recovered. Again, we have over 1,500 of them and over 58,000 names of those on the wall, those heroes on the wall. And that's why we do the wreath laying on those dates. So that's going to be at 9:45 on Friday, March 29th, right there at the Wall, at the Vietnam, we call it the Wall, quote unquote, Vietnam War Veterans Memorial. And this year we're doing something a little different too. We're actually going to have bagpipes out there to start off the ceremony and lead the procession. So we're really looking forward to it. My team puts together an awesome event.
You know what? You talk about the bagpipes. You're going to have folks in tears there. You know, and I appreciate it, because Trina just put one of your folks working with you. She just put up a note that said March 29th joins 6 other annual military-centric national holidays like that of Memorial Day, Independence Day, and Veterans Day. So does that mean it's actually going to be a national holiday from now on?
So it is a national holiday, and it will be a national holiday from now on. You're still going to have to go to work. It's not a federal or a state holiday, so we don't have that distinction yet. But who knows? Who knows?
Just a national recognition day.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, you've been sharing all of this with us, and you've given so much of, your life and your time, not only to serving your community in the state as a police officer, but serving the country in the military for all of these years. I just want to ask you, before we finish up the discussion though, so what is next for Ed Chrystal once he is done, once he is fully retired and done? Because I know you have a family. You guys live in New Jersey.
Correct.
And I would assume if you have any kids, they're all grown by now, I would assume.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. They're up there. I still got 2 living at home. I got one my oldest daughter is getting married next December. So we're looking forward to that. I tell you the truth, I'm not thinking that far ahead yet. I'm very fortunate and very honored to be where I am. And you can ask Trina and any one of the folks that work on our team. This is a very emotional investment. You're dealing with a lot of people who have we look at it peripherally, but they lived it. These folks lived this, and it's a lot of emotions involved, and for us, it's a lot of emotion involved because we get to do this. So I'm going to continue doing stuff like this as long as I can. Since I retired from the state police, I've continued on with the National Guard, and I've had the opportunity to lead men and women in that capacity, and in my civilian side, because the National Guard, most of us are part-time quote unquote soldiers and full-time civilians, citizens. Soldiers.
Yeah.
So I've had the opportunity to do a lot of work with veterans, and I love to just continue to do that and support veterans. Veterans are folks that deserve. They deserve, I don't want to say help, but they deserve recognition. They deserve assistance if they need it, and a lot of times they don't know when to ask for it. So I think we've made a big turn where we're recognizing, and even Vietnam, the toxic concerns, between Agent Orange and whatever other toxins they were breathing in, and same thing with as we're going through now. We're starting to see those invisible wounds, or the wounds that are not so readily available, the head trauma or the PTSD, stuff like that. So sometimes a veteran doesn't know when they need to reach out. So being a veterans advocate, or a managing veterans advocate, has been a great opportunity for me. I'm sure there'll be a lot more boat time and golf time once this stuff slows down, but I'm sure there'll always be some kind of work involved. So I appreciate you asking me that.
No, you're absolutely right about the veterans, not knowing all the time to reach out for help. Right. And, I've talked on this show, I shared my own struggle with PTSD and not wanting to get help until thank goodness my wife finally forced me and said, you need to get help, because you either don't realize you need it, or sometimes maybe you're a little too proud to recognize the fact that you do. And that's something that we talk about here on this show on numerous occasions, is those veterans need to reach out. But I as far as the emotion goes, my gosh, I think I've been to a number of ceremonies, even after I retired from the military. But I have to tell you, one of the strongest ones that I had, that when I was a young staff sergeant, when I was stationed at 27 Cav at Fort Carson, we pulled a lot of funeral detail at the VA cemetery in Denver. And we were there one cold winter morning to bury a Vietnam veteran. And it just so happened that morning that I was the head of the pallbearers instead of the firing squad. And this was a young corporal he was a corporal in Vietnam. And when I took the flag to present it to his family, his widow and the children were there. And she grabbed my uniform sleeve, just a death lock on my uniform sleeve, and just started crying. Wow. And, it was all I could do to sit there bent over to keep from bursting out in tears myself.
Yeah.
And so you're right. This becomes an emotional thing, I think. And it's such a credit to you and your organization and those other organizations out there who are doing this type of stuff to make sure that these people are recognized properly. My hat's off to you. I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing.
No, thanks. And on that note, I sometimes say I've been around a long time, 1985. And I'm still serving, and I've gone to funerals for those that served before me. I've gone to funerals for my friends. I've buried my friends, and I've sadly gone to funerals for my friends' kids who gave their lives in action. So it's the full gamut. And what strikes me is that we've been a nation of conflict for 20 something years now. And there's no shortage of men and women raising their hand to volunteer to stand between, us and those that wish us harm, to protect our way of life. So I give credit to this next generation of warrior and veterans.
Yeah, and they're going to be in need of similar type of help, just like the veterans in the past, or things that we've experienced. Well, General, I got to tell you, it's been wonderful to have you on the show talking about your organization, the Vietnam War commemoration. And folks, there's the websites there, the Facebook page. You can go on there and find out more information about what's going on, especially the big event here in DC coming up on the 29th of this month. But sir, before you go, I want to ask you one question. And I normally will ask this question of all of our guests, but I just want to ask you, if you had one message or thought that you'd like to share with the audience, what would it be?
So I'll sum it up and I'll explain it quickly. I would say our signature block: join the nation, thank a Vietnam veteran. And what I would say is, if you just join up with us on social media, we're on all the social media outlets. Read into a little bit. We push a lot of history about the Vietnam War and about what people have done since the Vietnam War, the Vietnam veterans that have made a difference in our lives. So get in there and get involved. And bring your Vietnam veteran to these events on March 29th. And Paul, thank you, and thank you for your continuous support of our commemoration and our veterans. And thank you to your audience.
Yeah, no, and like I said, we really appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule to come on and join us. And thanks to your staff for kind of helping us to coordinate all of this, because I know with your schedule, you keep busy, and I'm sure that you keep them busy as well.
Yeah, they keep in line, that's for sure. That's a good thing.
Well, sir, thank you so much for coming on. And for those of you out there in the audience, again, the website is up. As you know, we will post this up on my webpage on the network, so you can find more information and find the webpage there as well. And sir, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.
All right. And for those of you out there in the audience, you've been listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner with your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert. And I hope that you will continue to follow us for more very important shows covering veterans issues, and their families. So thank you. We hope to see you on the streaming network, home of GoingSoloMedia.com, and we hope to see you on our next